I'm so excited also to get to be part of our Back to Basics series today. What a joy it is to be here on these first Sundays of the year. Happy New Year, and to really step into an opportunity to rediscover for many of us and to discover some of the basic ideas of our teaching. This notion of back to basics is something that is practiced in centers all over the world like ours. While we are a unique and wonderful center, there are centers like Mile High all over our planet that are part of the Center for Spiritual Living, which we are affiliated with, and it is traditional for many of them to stop in January and really look at the basic ideas of our teachings. This is helpful in a number of ways for those of you who are brand new to Mile High or to this teaching, or if you're watching online and you're brand new, it gives you a sense, if you watch these talks in January, of what it is that we really believe, what we're all about. And that's helpful. And in fact, if you know people who are interested in discovering more about this teaching, or who you feel are kind of in alignment with this, these talks at the beginning of January, any January, are a great way to introduce them to our community through our YouTube channel or on our website so that they can understand what they're about. Because I don't know about you, but I've discovered there are a lot of people out there who are in resonance with what we teach here, but they may not be showing up because they've rejected the notion of church or organized religion. Dr. Fred Vogt used to say, it's okay, we're not that organized. And so sometimes helping someone access this in the many ways that we can these days helps them to understand what it is that it's all about, and maybe pass over that barrier that would keep them from church. This is also a good series for those of us who've been around for years and think that we know a lot about science of mind and spirit. Because what I've discovered in my own adventure in life, if you will, is that this notion that God, this God that we believe in, which is not a guy in the sky, but rather a presence, is an eternal presence. And for the human mind and heart, that it will be a lifetime, and many times possibly beyond this lifetime, that we will continue to evolve and deepen into our understanding, our relationship with this divine presence, and be able to continue to deepen into that and live from that. And so no matter how advanced you think you are, this is a great opportunity to go back to the basics. I have good news and I have bad news for you. In this endeavor, there will never be a time when you're done. Yeah, there'll never be a time when you can say, well, I took that class, I'm done. I got that practitioner license, I'm done. I am a minister, I'm done. I can assure you, I'm not done. I can assure you the growth and the deepening from the human level, the spiritual level, and all levels is continuing to have its way with me, despite anything that I have accomplished in the realm of certificates or degrees or anything. That this realm of life is this eternal exploration, and that we can take joy in that possibility. So we come back to basics every year and bring ourselves to it so that the evolved self can continue to deepen into its experience of the divine. And so thank you for those of you especially who've been around for a long time and know this teaching very well and know the works of Ernest Holmes very well for returning back to basics. And I have an agenda today. I'm grateful that I get to talk about inclusive spirituality, because I personally believe and want to state right here at the beginning that the time of living from and in and acting from separation has to end. It has to end, right? At least if what we say we all want, if it's to come about, separation has to be complete within us. The parts of us that want to separate ourselves from our mistakes and mess-ups, as I said at the welcome, the part of us that wants to criticize and make ourselves wrong, that wants to feel unworthy, and then project that all over people everywhere and make other people wrong for the things they want to do and the way they want to live in any realm. What we see for eons and eons and eons is that separation is not working in terms of peace on earth, goodwill to all. It's just not working. If it were, all of our relationships would be stellar. If it were, we would not be going to war or in violence with other countries. If it were, we would find solutions for the challenges that we face in every realm of life. It is because humans continue to cling to separation that we are ineffective at times at solving problems in our most personal relationships, as well as in the problems that bother us about the world. And so today, and going back to basics, I'm calling us to unity. I'm calling us to unification. I'm calling us to oneness. We're calling us in this series back to recognize that our teaching, as well as teachings throughout the ages, and mystics throughout the ages have told us time and time again that our solutions can come the more that we can find our way in heart and mind and prayer into love and connectedness. That's the work. That is the holy, sacred work of one who says they are spiritual. And so today becomes a conversation to say, am I really living that out? And how could I live that out more powerfully? And I want to just talk briefly about some of the things that bother people, or they're concerned about, or they're questioning when they come into a new teaching like this, because it is different here. We are not a traditional faith, in that so many things about how we do and what we do and the very fabric and fiber of our teaching is different. Science of mind, religious science. Reverend Josh mentioned last week, that's what we call ourselves. But that puts people off at times, that weird name, and people get confused, don't they, and think we're Christian Science or Scientology, right? I swear my grandfather died thinking I was a Scientology minister. And I said to him so many times, Papa, I am not a Scientologist. Not that there's anything wrong with that necessarily, because I believe everyone needs to find their way into their faith. But we are not Scientology, nor are we Christian Science. We are completely different from that. And so when people ask about that, nope, that's not us. We are distinct in that regard. Some people are nervous to come into a church or a center like ours because they feel like since we're not traditional, we must be a cult. And so, that's happened for eons, years ago, when the Christians first started to break out and to begin to speak about what they believed. They were labeled a cult. Many of them were killed for being in the cult of Christianity. And so the word cult gets bantered about. And so many times I will say to people who are concerned or think we're a cult, how would you know if we were a cult? What would we be doing that would reveal to you that we're a cult? And many times they'll say things like, well, the leader must be worshipped and believed no matter what. No, it doesn't happen here. No. Certainly loved, certainly appreciated, but not to that degree for sure. Nor a cult often requires one to give up all of their possessions to the community or to the leader. A cult will require you to give a certain amount of your worldly money to it, and will demand and tell you what your level of giving will be, which we do not do at all. Everyone who comes into Mile High Church is absolutely free to give all that they want or to give nothing and participate in whatever they would like. So we don't fall into that definition of a cult. A cult would keep track of you and notice if you were here, and if you were not here, you would be called back. I would like you to think about, for those of you who come here regularly, have you ever been missing and no one's called you? And you might have wanted us to, but with so many people, it's not that we don't care, it's just that we are not cultish enough to follow you around and make sure that you're showing up here every week. And nor do we tell you that if you aren't here, your life will not work for you, which many cults do. We'll tell you that you've got to be here. And you've got to check your brain at the door. You do not get to question what we say here at all if we were a cult. And I can tell you in classes that is not what happens at all. Lots of great conversations and questions. And lastly, a lot of times with a cult, there's some leader or some figure to worship. We do not worship anyone. We appreciate the teachings of Jesus. We appreciate the teachings of Buddha. We appreciate Gandhi and King, and we appreciate Mother Teresa, and we appreciate all of the spiritual leaders who have walked this planet. But we don't even worship our own Dr. Ernest Holmes. We quote him, we share his teachings, but I can tell you absolutely, I do not agree with everything that man said. And I'm happy to shout it out to the world, because that is what a teaching that allows its people to think and find their own answers does. And so we are a community. Part of what makes us different is that I think of us like an all-you-can-eat banquet, right? And people come in to the banquet and they take what works for them and what they like, and what they don't, they set aside. And there's nothing here that says you have to take it all or nothing. What we are is a community that is so inclusive and so willing to let people be here that we say, take what works for you. Use what works for you. And if something doesn't work for you, look at that. Be willing to explore that. But if it doesn't work for you, you are not banished. You don't get excommunicated from here. You can still participate to whatever degree is comfortable and participate at the level that you feel is right for you. And there's an openness and an acceptance, an inclusivity that says you can do what works for you. And we do not believe that we are the only right way. Now, this can be challenging because there's a propensity for humans when we get really passionate about something, we want to shout it out to the world. And so there's a fine line between what I would call passionate commitment to something and unhealthy tribalism. And even those of us who are part of this teaching that say we're so open and inclusive will sometimes have to watch the part of us that wants to get a little tribalistic about this. We are not the only right way. There are many ways to walk the path of relationship to the divine. We believe this is one way. Here's my prediction. When we all get to the other side, we'll meet and see if I'm right. When we get there, we'll probably find that pieces of every bit of it were right, and pieces of every bit of it were not actually on target. Even some of this, right? It's very possible. And we are audacious enough to say, well, we're going to passionately be committed to this path. But passionate commitment to one path does not mean that I have to make other people wrong who do not practice this path. So we as a teaching don't go out and proselytize and try to convert people or tell people they have to be here, this is the only right way. We don't even say, boy, the world would be so much better if everyone was religious science. You may think it occasionally, but you don't say it. Because we believe that what I believe personally is that everyone committed to their own experience of the divine, living it out, will find, no matter what faith they're part of, that mystic portal into oneness and inclusion that allows for there to be space enough to say, you please be passionately what works for you and allow me to be passionate about what works for me. That is the nature of inclusivity. It's a challenging thing to practice and to live because we all have wounds of where we've not felt included. When I showed up here in 1979, I had big wounds of not feeling included. When I was about 5 years old, I remember sitting in the backyard of our home in Salida, Colorado, and looking out at the sky and the trees and sitting on a swing and feeling so connected to some universal presence and just feeling that presence as divine love and light and wholeness, and it was so wholesome and pure. And our family was not church-going, but I had a little friend who went to a Christian church in Salida, and I was curious about it. So I asked if I could go, and I went, and I got to go to Sunday school and go to services, and I loved it. I loved the community aspect of church and people coming together to worship and pay attention to the universe and the divine. And they told me there, God is love. And that love that God is loved each one of us so much that it made us in its image and likeness. And oh, my little soul resonated with that. And then all of a sudden, they started to tell me, even though God's love, God can't love those people or those people. People who don't follow the Bible, people who don't believe in Jesus, people who don't worship the way we, God can't love them. And that was the first spiritual crisis of my life. Because I thought, that doesn't ring true for me. How can God be love, but then create beings and people and that he would banish, or it would banish? It just did not make sense. And then we moved to Denver, and at the age of 10, I began to have personal challenges in school as my little body was shifting and changing, and every day of my life I was being tortured and bullied and tormented for how my body looked, for being a girl who looked different, I was called names, and I began to separate myself from my own image in the mirror and my own body and believe that I was too diverse to be lovable, that I was too different, that there's no way that anybody could ever love me. And of course, from the age of 10 on, I was very into romance, and it was so heartbreaking because I believed firmly from the input that I'd been given for so many days, I was ugly and absolutely unlovable. Ugly, fat, and unlovable. Those were the words. And then, when I was 13, my parents got divorced, which actually I thought was a very good thing. But the thing that happened is that my father disappeared, and I felt another rejection. I felt like this man that I loved, this charming man, that my parents would be much happier without each other, but that I would still get to have a relationship with my father, and he just disappeared, and I felt abandoned. And again, that conversation was, I'm not lovable. If I was more lovable, he would be here, and I took the full brunt of that within my own soul. And that same year, I was ceremoniously kicked out of catechism. So I showed up here in 1979, not feeling very included in life. Not included in the universe, not included in God's world, and certainly not included in my own mind about myself. But when I walked into this place, like many of you, I felt something that was very much akin to sitting in that backyard, looking out at the sky and sensing the divine love. And I felt, and people acted like and said to me and looked me in the eyes and said that I was loved just as I was, and I was welcome just as I was, and invited me in and allowed me to step into classes, and oh my gosh, allowed me to do what got me kicked out of catechism, which was ask questions and debate and ponder and not always agree with the teacher. And oh my gosh, could this be for real? And the more that I came here and the more that I stayed and the more that I learned about this teaching, I learned that at the core of the teaching, that's it. Everyone is welcome. Everyone is accepted just as they are. Everyone's journey is holy and sacred. And that the reason that we believe in that and can live that out so voraciously is because our belief about God is not some far-off being out there, but rather is a presence that science even tells us that this universe is made up of the same energy but diversely expressed. At the molecular level, the same thing diversely expressed. And so I learned that a key component of this teaching is the apparent paradox of unity and diversity. We are all one. We are all made of the same stuff. The people you love, the people you don't. The people you like, the people you don't. The people who are doing what you agree with, the people who are doing what you disagree with. The people who've done the most wonderful, amazing work in the world, the people who've been horrible and rude and bad. It's all God. And that each being is a specialization of the divine energy and can take that creative flowing energy that everyone has and specialize it for their greater good, or specialize it in ways that don't really serve them or others. That we've all been given the free will to create that life. And that through our acceptance and embrace, and through our ability to be in that space of the unity and honor the human diversity, we see the true nature of the universe and we experience the true nature of the universe. And not only that, nature mirrors this to us, doesn't it? How many of us nature lovers would love for there to be only one kind of flower? No daffodils, only roses. No stinkweeds at all. Get rid of the stinkweeds and nature's perfect. How many of us would only like there to be cats and no dogs? Or no, don't clap. And dogs or no cats. Right? How many of us would only like there to be elephants but not hippos? We understand as we look at nature that the diverse experience of it is part of its beauty, even insects or bugs. We may not like them, we may not prefer them, but we see that in the totality of the wholeness of nature, everything has its purpose, and everything has its unique way of showing its beauty. And this is the truth of humans also. The humans that we're looking at that we don't agree with their lifestyle or the way they're living or the choices they're making on behalf of us or other people, our opportunity exists to say, how could I embrace my unity and my diversity in and with those people? What is the pathway into that? And so there's a sacred spiritual inclusivity that we practice here at Mile High Church and in Science of Mind and Spirit. It is the honoring of saying, when I look out at the world and I sense that disturbance in the force, if you will, of my own being, with regards to myself or other people, I use my spiritual practice to feel the expansive nature of that which unites us, of that which loves and embraces all of us unconditionally, including myself. Because I can tell you the genesis of those things that I had in me when I came here are the things that still can hook me in my own personal life. And my practice has to be and has been to make every attempt in the moment when I'm tempted to be rejecting myself, to feel the love in my spiritual practice of God as every molecule in my body, to feel the love of God in my heart as I am tempted to reject myself for something I've said or done, is to feel and take into my prayer the things that I see out in the world and the people that I see out in the world that aren't doing what I think they should be doing, and bring them into my practice so that I can unite myself and my own perceptions of myself and my world back to the truth. That is practicing and practical practice of living out unity. Spiritual unity, spiritual connection, spiritual inclusivity. And we spend way too much time arguing with ourselves about how different we are and what's wrong with them and why they should be different and what they should do differently. And not that those conversations don't have their place, because in a healthy relationship, in a healthy conversation, they can happen. But it is the conversations that happen out of the deep spiritual reverence and respect for the uniqueness of everyone that begin to forward and change and transform things. We will not be able to do that if we're in anger and pisosity and make wrong and judgment, if we're projecting onto other people, here's how I do things, you should do it my way. That kind of energy does not forward any good thing. And so our work as a spiritual group of beings is to be in prayer first, always about the unified field of the divine, even in that which we dislike, to be practicing that. One of my favorite things that Ernest Holmes said is the biggest life is the one that gives the most, loves the most, includes the most, has the greatest understanding and the greatest consciousness of eternal good, and redistributes this good to the largest number of people. He invites us to be big. And then we have a challenge to step into human inclusiveness. If this is what I believe spiritually, how do I practice that in my human relationships? The spiritual inclusiveness has to do with my spiritual practice and taking into prayer and meditation things that disturb me. In my human relationships, we teach and practice here, as many other faiths do, practicing human inclusiveness by listening respectfully to people, by learning to forgive and let go of grievances and let go of that which hangs on to us and what is separating us from other people, by simply learning to be kind to one another, to be kind in our word, to be kind in our mind, to be kind in our actions, not only to other people, but to ourselves. And so a lot of our work in classes and in terms of messages on Sunday is all about how can I begin to put into practice this very powerful idea of inclusivity. Who am I separating out of my heart or my mind? Who have I put the hand up to? And instead, how can I open my heart? And this is what can change us and can change the landscape in which we live. A few weeks ago, it was actually on December 10th, my 20-year-old son was moving from one apartment to another in Capitol Hill. And my wonderful husband, Ken, and I went to go help him move. And when we got to his apartment that morning, there was a parking spot right in front of the apartment. And Ken wanted to park there, but he kind of got stuck. And so he said to me, "Michelle, stand in the parking spot while I drive around the block. And then I'll come back and put the truck there." So I said, okay. So my son had gone inside, and Ken drove off around the block, and I stood there in the parking lot, or the parking spot in front of the street. I could see the Capitals right there, and there's people walking all over the place and going to work. And I heard some screaming, and so I looked over, and a catty corner from me, there was a gentleman there dressed in black, wearing a black backpack, and he was screaming at every person who went past him. Just screaming at them. And I couldn't hear what he was saying, but he was also screaming obscenities. I could hear bad words coming out of his mouth, and he sounded angry, and I got really curious about it, and then I got kind of scared. I'm standing here all alone, and there's a man over there, he's screaming at people, and what do I do if he comes to me? And I started getting scared, and I wanted to just run. I wanted to run inside the apartment and just find Jesse and stay in there till, say to Ken, "Too bad, so sad, you're going to find your own parking spot." But I didn't, because I wanted to not disappoint my husband, and because I stood there and said to myself, now if is this really somebody I need to be afraid of? And I felt, no, I don't think I need to be afraid of him. He doesn't feel like a threat. He hasn't touched anyone. He's just yelling at people. And so I said, well, what if I stood here? How could I maybe contribute to his life? And all I did was I turned towards him, and I started sending light, white light, and love, and peace, and just well-being, and just started breathing it out to him. And he was not facing me, but all of a sudden he kind of stopped, and he turned and he looked right at me, and his eyes got really big, and he started screaming, "White devil!" And I was like, I don't know if he sees the color of my skin or not, I can be kind of a white devil every once in a while, but I thought, I wonder if he felt it. I wonder if he felt this light. And he said it a number of times, white devil, white devil. And I wasn't scared. I just kept sending the light. And then he stopped and he took a breath and he walked off. Now, I don't know what happened there, but something in me said that he felt what I was doing at some level, that he was sensitive enough that he could feel it. It's okay if he wanted to reject it, but it showed me the connection. And it showed me that I have a choice. And the rest of that day, I felt connected. Because instead of being afraid and making him wrong and judging him and going into my head about, this guy's downtown, it's so scary down here, blah, blah. Instead of all that, I made a different choice. I don't know if it made a difference for him, but it made a difference for me. It made me feel connected. And every once in a while, when I think of him, I still send that white light. Because it's time, no matter what, for us to be willing to love fiercely and to cease these conversations of separation and to step into our spiritual practice and our spiritual life with a willingness to send love and light and be in conversations of love and light. I'd like to close today with a poem. And we have these cards to give to you if you would like to take one of these with you and read this poem throughout this week as a part of your spiritual practice, to anchor into this message in your own way and to put on your altar. And it is a poem that is reportedly inscribed on the wall of Mother Teresa's children's home in Calcutta, and it was attributed to her. However, an article in the New York Times back in 2002 reported that the original version of this poem was actually written by Kent M. Keith, and it's called Love Anyway. He says, people are often unreasonable, illogical, and self-centered. Forgive them anyway. If you are kind, people may accuse you of selfish, ulterior motives. Be kind anyway. If you are successful, you will win some false friends and some true enemies. Succeed anyway. If you are honest and frank, people may cheat you. Be honest and frank anyway. What you spend years building, someone could destroy overnight. Build anyway. If you find serenity and happiness, they may be jealous. Be happy anyway. The good you do today, people will often forget tomorrow. Do good anyway. Give the world the best you have, and it may never be enough. Give the world the best you have anyway. You see, in the final analysis, it's between you and your God. It was never between you and them anyway. Anyway, that's inclusion.